Today we are going to analyze a short Bach chorale as part of the ABRSM Grade 7 Music Theory syllabus and learn how Bach modulates in his music. Let's jump straight into it. This is how a Bach chorale looks like. It is quite short and is only a small movement of a cantata. We have a total of 6 phrases here, and Bach made it easy for us to identify phrase structure with these fermatas, or pauses, here. Consistently throughout his chorales, a fermata will indicate the ending of a phrase. Now let's focus on only the first 3 phrases. According to the fermatas, we can analyze the phrases this way. We started in the key of A minor, so in the first phrase we have these chords. The notes A, C, E, A will form chord 1, while G sharp, B, E, B will form chord 5B with a doubled fifth. This dominant chord is formed from the harmonic minor scale, which explains the accidental, and is arranged in the first inversion because the third of the chord is in the bass. The last 2 chords are also A minor chords with different arrangements. The second phrase seems to modulate to C major. The clue is the disappearance of G sharp and the presence of a perfect cadence in C major. This means we have modulated to the relative major key, and the pivot chord is the A minor chord itself. This is chord 1 of the original key and chord 6 of the new key. We only arrive to C major in the third beat of bar 2. The key of C major does not last very long, as in the third phrase we revert back to A minor. The clue is the appearance of F sharp and G sharp, notes from A melodic minor. The pivot chord is the A minor chord itself in the second beat, but Bach did not introduce the dominant instantly. We have to go through 3 additional chords before we get to a perfect cadence at the end of the phrase. This clearly means that the C major chord was only tonic size and we are basically still in A minor. I won't go through all the chords here, but it will be good if you can pause and analyze them yourself. The third phrase is significantly different from the previous 2 because it is longer and has been decorated with passing notes, auxiliary notes, and subsidiary harmony notes. The D note in the tenor part at the end is also interesting. We can think about it as a passing note or the extension into a dominant 7th chord too. A few other things to note here. There is the use of the melodic minor in the bass line, which is why when we descend, we have notes from the natural minor, but when ascending, we have the sharpened 6th and 7th scale degrees. Another important decoration is the 4/3 suspension found in the soprano part in bar 4. The C note was prepared from chord 4/7 and forms a dissonance with chords 5 before it resolves to a B note. Lastly, there is the use of a Picardy's third, where chord 1 of A minor is now an A major chord. This is also a form of borrowed chord. Let's move on to the next 3 phrases. Here we have phrases 4, 5, and 6. Remember that we have a Picardy's third at the end of the previous phrase? That can be seen as a tonic of the key of A major, and it is also being used as a dominant to the key of D minor. We know it's modulating to D minor because of the B flats in this phrase and also the C sharp, the raised 7th note of D minor. There are some interesting chords here, including a chord 2 half diminished 7th in the first inversion. Bach also included a Picardy's third at the end, so we get a D major chord instead of a D minor chord at the end of the phrase. From this D major chord, we segue into G major temporarily, as the D major chord is also the dominant of G major. Then, the G major chord in the first inversion will lead us into the key of C major. We can also think of the D major chord as the secondary dominant, the G major chord as the dominant, and the C major chord as the new tonic from a macro perspective. Lastly, in phrase 6, we transit back to A minor, with the D minor chord as the pivot. It is chord 2 from C major's view by chord 4 from A minor's. We then have the secondary dominant to tonic size A minor, marking a return to the key we started. What's interesting is that there is a tonicization of the dominant in the first beat of the last bar, a B dominant 7th chord that leads into E major. The pivot chord in this case is the A minor chord 1 in the key of A minor, and as a borrowed chord 4 in the key of E major. This is a chord borrowed from E minor, which explains the lack of C sharp. Now let's point out some interesting aspect about this music. We see how Bach used unaccented passing notes forming parallel thirds between the tenor and bass as quavers, while the top 2 voices remain in crotchets. We also see further reiterations of the 4/3 suspensions, prepared and resolved methodically in the alto voice. There are also 2 instances where subsidiary harmony notes at the bass line seem to hint at a change of inversions, from first inversions to root positions. Lastly, we saw that Bach also used accented passing notes sparingly here to add interest to the melodic lines. These are non-chord tones that appear on strong beats before resolving to chord tones. From a larger view, we can also conclude that phrase 5 is a sequence of phrase 4, written a second lower. Now let's listen to how this chorale sounds like. Hey guys, my name is Kenneth and I help music teachers and students with everything related to ABRSM music theory. If you found my content helpful, hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel so you don't miss out on any of my videos. If you're new to music theory and haven't learned how to modulate, these videos are made for you.